Hello and welcome to another We Interview video here on Gamingtrend.com. My name is Adam Marino, and today we have a chance to talk to Ludvig Forssell, creator of soundtracks for some iconic games in our industry, such as Metal Gear 5, PT, Death Stranding, and now Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Very excited. Your launch for Death Stranding 2 is very close. We're days away at this point. Um, Go ahead.
No, it's a week from now for the
Yeah.
people who have the early order in 23rd or something. I guess they get to play it, and yeah, that's the same day reviews are coming out. So very exciting.
It's gonna be a blast. We know Kojima. Like it's gonna be a ride one way or another. Well, first question. At this point, at what point in your life did you know that you wanted to write music, and what led you to working in the gaming industry specifically?
Ooh, that question is actually the answer, I guess, is somewhat of not a doozy, but it came out of necessity, honestly. I'd always been a musician playing in bands and such from like elementary school. Uh, and after I finished high school, I went to music high school here back in Sweden, and yeah, didn't really know what to do with my life, so I decided to go to Japan and study Japanese. And during that whole process of learning to live in Japan, learning the language and everything, I realized that I wanted to stay in Japan, but I didn't want to become a salaryman. Uh, so I thought that I'd continue on, my musical journey and maybe become, a studio musician or something like that, because I'd always been like a guitarist. But I went to a couple of schools to check it out, and I'll be honest, the level was so low that I thought that I'm not going to be able to play with these kids because at the time, I was pretty good at the time. I'm not anymore. I'm trying to get better again for the tour that's coming up later this year. Um, so I realized that I kind of had to do stuff on my own, which meant like, well, I guess I should write music then. So that's how I decided that I wanted to become a composer. I'd just been dabbling in composing really at that time. And yeah, looking at the industry, the gaming industry was sort of the one where you could get stable work. So it was really out of necessity in a way that I stumbled across a couple of hurdles and ended up where I ended up. So yeah, I went to school here in Japan and got a job out of school at Konami and learned to love the industry from there, basically.
And that's a crazy like step into the gaming industry is like you've got some iconic games already on your resume and it's you're just building more and more steam every day, I feel. Well, you've worked hand in hand with Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions for quite a few projects. What is it like working through games that always have something that pushes the boundaries? So when it comes to these games, a lot of times you're having to make things fit for things that we may not have seen before. So what is the production like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I started out doing Metal Gear, which is obviously a game that has a huge legacy and a lot of music and a lot of composers that, created that legacy and the history and, the sound of Metal Gear. So that was a whole different journey getting into that and also having uh, come onto a project that had many ideas already presented by the audio director when I came on and trying to learn how to do that gig was sort of the hardest thing that I'd done at the time. And I'd been in the industry for less than a year. Um, and that was sort of the first challenge in that case of like, yeah, the senior composer telling me like, this is the first game that really actually looks like a Hollywood movie, so we really can be of less quality with the music as well. I was like, oh shit, I'm just a junior. How do I do this? And but thankfully we had a lot of years to sort of figure that whole thing out and things progressed and I ended up being the lead composer for that one. But that was just a whole lot of figuring things out. On the flip side, though, working on the first Death Stranding, that was something that, we were coming up with new stuff from zero. Basically, we didn't have the whole legacy of Metal Gear. So again, yeah, having Hideo have very clear visions of a basic timbre and sound that he wants to go for is super helpful. So that was basically, where I started off with Death Stranding was Hideo telling me, "Yo, we got to do analog synths," and like he was referencing the soundtrack from the film It Follows, for example, and
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, I love that. Yes.
yeah, so yeah, actually, we talked to Disasterpiece a bit. Things didn't work out. He could have been a collaborator on that one, but that's
Wow.
happening. But anyways, I was figuring out that sound and similar, like classic horror movies from the 70s and their soundtrack and try to emulate that and make that into my whole own thing while also expanding upon that to make it, that's something that's bespoke for Death Stranding and that world that we were creating again from zero. And yeah, I spent like a year and a half just trying stuff out, buying synths and learning those synths and learning new plugins and everything just to find something that I thought was special and bespoke to Death Stranding and something that could represent that whole new thing. So again, trying out stuff, throwing shit at the walls, see what sticks for a good amount of time was basically the way we ended up being able to create that soundtrack, I
That's
think.
so cool. I'm a huge orchestral fan. Like I listen to, orchestral music and soundtracks all the time. So hearing that is so exciting. But it also leads to my next question, which is what may have been your favorite instrument that you wrote for Death Stranding? You use a lot of different kinds of plugins, a lot of different kinds of keyboards, a lot of different kinds of instruments in general. Was there one that you kind of gravitated towards as like this was my favorite to use?
Well, when it comes to Death Stranding 1, I have to give a shout out to my good old workhorse, the Prophet 6 synth. That's still a huge part of the second game's soundtrack as well. Um, that sort of became the core of the analog synth sides to the sounds of Death Stranding. For Death Stranding 2, though, I mean, like, uh, we didn't have any guitars almost on the first one, and the second one conceptually with Higgs's the villain Higgs's character design having a guitar, we knew early on that we wanted to incorporate that, and again spent a good amount of time of trying to figure out like what guitar sounds would work best in a way where they're not just, oh, here's a guitar again, since you got to meld them together
Mhm.
and that when that was figured out, a good 6 months down the line after having tried out a bunch of stuff, that's when I realized, yeah, we can do this. Because I hated guitars for the first one. I was like, no guitars ever. If they're in there, they're not gonna sound like guitars, basically.
Hmm.
But yeah, figuring out how to feature guitars for the second one was a big, well, if I'm to mention one thing, yeah. First one, Prophet 6, second one, um, my guitar over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got mine back here, so. So that actually kind of works directly into my next question. So you get to use another example, I guess.
Oh,
Just like characters change throughout the game, music does as well. What has been the biggest change between working on Death Stranding and Death Stranding 2 on the beach? It seems like guitar is one of the main ones, but is there anything else that's really like been a huge change for you between the first and second game?
I think conceptually, I wanted to write music for the second one. Now, music that was more satisfying musically than the first one. For the first one, we did a lot of ambient, eerie stuff that really worked well, creating that world. And that bass has always, that still exists, but I wanted to write music that was in a way like I'd been seeing people play the game and other games and I really love seeing people play a game and really, you know, popping off with the music. So I wanted to do more of that for the second one. So conceptually trying to write music in a way where I, as a composer, wasn't as focused on just like this is supposed to be informative in this way or that way. The boss is doing this attack or something else. We can always figure that out afterwards. So
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of the music in rather than, looped chunks. I wrote them in suites that were, they start small, go big, go smaller again. And um, yeah, really look forward to people checking out the soundtrack because it should be a different experience, I think, this time from playing the game and then reliving everything through the soundtrack. And yeah, as the soundtrack flows throughout, also should be a really interesting experience, I hope.
That's so exciting. And I just want to take a moment. You did mention that you were going to be touring. Is that something that you want to showcase right now? Do you have dates? Where can people see all this? And when can people hear the soundtrack?
Well, embargo. I'm not sure where this is going.
Embargo, embargo.
Um, Game is coming out. Information will be coming out very
Mhm.
soon.
Okay. I'm glad that we covered the embargo right there in the moment. Sounds good. Okay, so the last question is one that we actually ask everybody that comes on the show, and that is, what is one memory in your time working in the industry that will stay with you as a happy memory?
I think, well, I should probably mention something recent. I think it was a huge surprise to me, I guess, in a way, going into the game mix for Death Stranding 2 and just seeing the game in a way that I couldn't this time around because I was an in-house at Kojima Productions. So it was really my first time playing through the game bit by bit and seeing all the different parts with the final, implementations of the music, and that also being quite balanced against everything else, sound effects and dialogue and everything, and just being blown away with what the game had become. And you know I really don't play games that I work on myself. I prefer to watch people play them, and watch streamers do LPs of games just to see how other people react to it, because in
Yeah.
most cases I already know what's going to happen, so it's not going to surprise me. But in a way, seeing that this time around from a different position than I was for the first game was really exciting. And I can't be more excited for other people to have even more surprises going through playing the game from beginning to end. So yeah, that was great. That was just at the beginning of this year, and I can't wait to see how much further they pushed everything beyond what I saw, which was still a work in progress.
I'm so ready to see what Death Stranding 2 on the beach has for us. I'm so excited to see or to hear your soundtrack for it, especially after everything you've told us today. I know you're busy, so we're going to let you go right there. But we just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. Good luck on the travels, good luck on the launch of the game, and we will definitely be excited to hear your soundtrack.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.